All right, everybody, away we go. Uh-oh, what happened here? Shoot, we froze, didn't we? Hang on. We froze there for a second, I think. I think I'm going. Oh, hello. We there? Okay, good. Awesome. All right, welcome. It is Wednesday, July 30th, 30th today. There it is. 30th of 2025, off to a rough start already. It is the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan call tonight, and we find ourselves in week number 3. So I just want to go over, you should be seeing the topics here tonight, and I just want to go through them real quick to make sure that when somebody comes into this for the first time, they see at the beginning of it where we are, where we started, where we're going, and understand that this is a holistic look at how to strategically run a business, right? So, and strategic puts us, if you look at, go back and look at the recording from week 1, and you can find all those on YouTube. Every time we go live, we broadcast there, so they're recorded. Also, if you're in one of the groups, a Griffin, a TRCer, you have a link to a document where Lauren puts all the recordings in there. So you always have the run of 12, because obviously it's variable and it differs, and I make improvements to it, even small ones each time. Over the last couple of sessions, I put them in a certain order based on the business model, which I explain in the first call now. I didn't do that before. I take a business infographic that I have actually an arm's length away from me based on Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, and I explain why a strategic approach to all of this matters. And then in the next week, we start to really act as if this is a business. We're talking about being a profitable real estate agent. So we really teach you how to set that universal revenue goal for yourself. When I say universal, I mean, it really is the top line of your business. Before splits, before expenses, before anything, you need a North Star financially, and that's your financial goal, because that becomes a very important part of how we break things down over time. But in this week, it's important to say, okay, so there's the model, there's the North Star, but who are you now? And who do you have to become this person that achieves that? Because we never start off being perfectly prepared to be that person. And that's all about the mindset. So I have changed a lot of this to follow the model. So in other words, describe the model, and I'm staring at it now. Strategic business vision is what we started with in week 2, but then strategic leadership vision. A vision for you, who you are, how this goes, all of that is really important, right? That we keep that in mind. So when you look at it from that standpoint, that's where you're at in this program. And then after this week, we really start to get heavy into strategic marketing, and then strategic conversion and follow-up. And those are the real 2 one-punch engines that drive it, and mostly where you think the business really gets run. But if you don't have a business model, a financial goal, and a goal for your own self-development as a strategic manager of your business, you're just not starting on the right foot. And I'm saying that from my own perspective. I wished I had this perspective 25 years ago, 26 years ago now, when I started this business, because it would have saved me so much discovery time, that tactically running into a wall only to find out that wasn't the best way. Yes, I made money along the way, but that just wasn't the best way. I wasn't in a flow state per se, growing, doing business, and building a business, most importantly, that is predictable and sustainable no matter what the economy's doing. Because we are now going into another swing in the economy. You can see inventory piling up everywhere, some places higher than others. In fact, in Boston, it's reached 7 months. And for those of you that are rookies to seeing the statistics and the data, put that in perspective, that 2 months was about the COVID inventory, and even less than that, some places like Seattle and Washington, D.C., greater Bethesda, Maryland area, very, very little inventory. And the way inventory works is that it's a weird stat, but it says at the way we're selling properties now, at that rate, right now, when you take a static look at it, it would only take 2 months to sell everything. So now all of a sudden, if that swells up to 7 months, yikes. It would take 7 months to sell everything, and maybe it's even backing up more. Well, that sounds like bad news in general, but it's just a pendulum swing. So when you have a strategic approach to a business and you're doing things in a very systematic way, you can sustain that and you know what to do right now. So in my one-on-one coaching with all my one-on-one coaching members, when I talk to them each week, I'm like, okay, this is that moment in time where you have to put the message out there. In another day or so, 3 days or so, I'll have the statistics and I'll look at it. And that's the call to action to the buyers. The buyers are now in a position where they have way more choice than they had in a long time, multiple years since COVID scarcity. They definitely are going to be able to negotiate something off the price. And a lot of them, after further inspection of a house, are finding the ability to get some concessions to get some things done. And that's my own experience I'm talking about, okay? So this is why being strategic first and then tactical matters, right? Strategy means like, okay, I'm a little bit lost in like this deal today. Hey, I'm negotiating a couple deals today. I'm a little bit lost in that. I'm focused on trying to make that money. But all of a sudden I forgot, I stopped executing my plan to get to my financial goal. And next thing you know, I'm wondering 6 months later what happened. That's the difference between somebody who takes some time to work on their business and then goes back to working in it. Like working in it is an open house. Working in it is negotiating a deal. Working in it is getting a listing presentation, getting that listing, working it. That's working in it. But why we're doing any of those things has to do with strategy. Now, I will leave you also with something that I heard this week from Ray Dalio, who runs Bridgewater Capital. I think he's now chairman emeritus and he's sort of backed his way out, but grew this thing basically from his apartment to be this unbelievable juggernaut. And he talks a lot about, which everybody does, the compound effect, right? So the compound effect in finance, especially if you're young and you're listening to this, take this advice. If you're just patient, and for example, you put money in finance into what would be called the S&P Standard 500 index fund. It just means it takes 500 of the best and biggest companies and it just invests passively in those. And your return on that historically somewhere around 10% plus or minus a point, right? Well, after year one, if you got $100, you get 110, and then it's 10% of 110, et cetera, et cetera. So it's growing in a compounded way. Well, it hit me. I'm like, well, wait a minute, because he says in compounding, the compounding effect doesn't just relate to returns. I'm like, voila. That's what I need to tell you working on your business does. The compound effect of working on your business, even if it's just this call with me once a week or listening to the recordings, you're making these little incremental improvements that have compounding effect on them. So for example, when I made a strategic decision to go back to saying and teaching you, the way that this business works is predicated on the acquisition of listings, putting them into the MLS, pricing them right, and getting them sold, right? All of that is a strategic decision to do so. That's what it is, right? So tactically, we go out and we door knock or we call somebody who has expired, is for sale by owner, or maybe somebody's passed, and we can tactically go do those things and make an offer to those people, okay? And that's a compounding effect over time. But then you come back and say, okay, I door knocked. I got to tweak my script. So strategically, let's talk about why we have to change the script this week. And let's change it and say something different. And then it gets a little better and a little better and a little better. Before you know it, a lot of people are positively reacting. So what might have been an open house where you had no strategy and you were just giving things away and you're sort of pursuing somebody. Hey, you don't have a realtor? I can be your realtor, and out the door they go. I teach all of you to say, watch $25,000 walk by your face, because that's what just walked out the door on $1 million, right? Cut it in half, 500. There goes 12.5. So if you don't work on your business, you don't get this opportunity to do something that's better and earn a return on that and then compound it. So your self-improvement in the context of business as a strategist has an incredible compounding effect. Now, that doesn't always mean you just keep growing like crazy, like interest. What it means is you're building something that now you've compounded your strategic ability to see the market happening before something happens, which is right now. I have been tracking very closely since the implementation of the original tariffs, a huge precipitous drop in the stock market in March, quickly recovered beyond that now, but something feels off to me because we know that all this discombobulation is going to change things. And it already has in our business. So while people are yelling and screaming about tariffs and it's a tax on the consumer and the consumer goods, well, prices have been up for a long time since COVID. And that's why the Fed's not going to do anything. Even though we're screaming for the Fed to do something, they're not going to, because there's so much that's been inflated since COVID that they're actually quietly going to let things really correct. They will try to prevent any kind of deep recession, but they're not going to do anything. They didn't today, and now they don't even meet till September. So we're going to have 60 days here where inventories build up, and we'll have to watch them very closely and see what happens. But again, if you've been working on your business, you know it's the time to call the buyers. And it's the time to do the open houses that you can get yourself in, being prepared with the buyer unique selling propositions that we teach in this class, right? That's what we teach in 2 weeks. We'll get into that. We first tell you with content how to make them, and then we teach you all about why that makes you unique. So 2 weeks of that. And that's the opportunity right now on the buy side. But on the sell side, people have to sell. They don't care what's happening in the economy. They have a real reason to sell. They downsize or whatever. I just got an offer on one of my listings that almost lives like a duplex with a finished, beautiful lower level. And their son, unfortunately, had a motorcycle accident and he can't really fully live on his own. So we have the ideal product for them, right? So like they don't care what's happening on Wall Street today, right? They don't care what the Fed did today. It's irrelevant. And so those are the things that you have to be prepared for, that there are sellers that still need to sell. So it's not bad news if somebody wants to sell. It's just like, okay, we have new economic data we have to deal with, okay? So that's a precursor into, you see how I'm speaking? That's the persona of leadership and mindset that I have worked on for 26 years in this business, literally, because I started with just working on mindset stuff that had nothing necessarily to do with this business. But once I learned those core techniques, which I'll teach you tonight, I did apply them to being a leader in this business, which is why I can sit here tonight with confidence, knowing all of these things that strategically I know matter. I'm able to synthesize that information, shrink it down to just a few talking points and share it, whether it's you in a coaching context, whether it's a seller, a buyer, whomever it may be. That's how this works, okay? All right, so let's get into this right now. And you should be seeing how to develop your profitable agent mindset. And if you're not seeing that, you can say something other than that. I'm going to start the slideshow. And like I always say to you, if I've invited you here to ask me questions about your business on any topic, free game. The minute I stop the lecture portion of this, it's a little bit longer when it comes to the mindset because it's a super uber important subject. Feel free to have your questions lined up for me about anything. If you're a little bit nervous about speaking up in a group like this, you can send them in the chat or whatever, but I'll deal with anything at the end of the night for all of you that came live because I appreciate you being here live, okay? All right, so how to develop your profitable agent mindset. The theater of the mind, okay, is where this all begins. It's a place in your mind. Imagine inside your head, there's a theater, and you can visualize and create your ideal self-image. Now, this body of work comes from the book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is a crazy name. I always joke, it sounds like something Tom Cruise belonged to out in LA, right? It's mind. And the Greek word cybernetics is about steering systems. So it's mind steering systems, a very powerful interpretation of what those two words mean together. Because you might think, well, how can I steer my mind? That doesn't really sound exactly possible, right? Or is it? So this guy by the name of Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon in the early part of the 1900s, I think 30s, 40s is where he really starts to get going down in New York. He's got a great Brooklyn accent. It's a cool guy. If you can go to YouTube and search him, you can hear him speak his own words about this. But he gets credit through that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, for, I don't know that he came up with the term self-image, I doubt it, but he really pushes it to the forefront. And of course, most of the people back then were heavily influenced by people like Napoleon Hill, who became very popular with his book, Law of Success, and then later on, Think and Grow Rich. all of this big body of work about success teaching. And so they were all affected by that body of work, which really is like it's biblically thick. The Law of Success is just really this big, thick. I thought I had brought it over here, but it's a really thick book of Napoleon Hill studying all these people who were successful during the industrial age, right? So he has access to people like Rockefeller, Carnegie, but especially Henry Ford, who really impacted me in the way that I think about things. So how do you use all that body of work and put that weapon of a self-image to work? Well, first you have to understand what it means, because your self-image can either limit or empower you depending on what? Your beliefs and perceptions. Now, this is why I highly recommend you go read Psycho-Cybernetics. There is another version of it called the New Psycho-Cybernetics, which is how I became aware of all this. My marketing mentor, Dan Kennedy, had a stutter, used psycho-cybernetic techniques to recreate the self-image as a non-stutterer. How about this? And became a very successful platform speaker back when you would go to the Boston Garden filled with people. Somebody like Dan would come to the stage, do a speech, and sell from the stage. These folks were incredible. That doesn't happen really anymore. But back about 25 years ago, 20 years ago, there were people doing this, and they were so good at it. They still do it, but not at that level of drawing that crowd anymore, because online changed it so much. But imagine that, having the stutter, being able to sit in front. I forget what the old Boston Garden used to hold. Say, let's make up the number, 25, 30,000 people, most of the place filled. And this person's out there speaking to them because he recreates himself to believe and perceive that he did not have a stutter. Stunning. Like, I heard him stutter one time. I go, oh, you have a stutter. And I had no idea the background of how he had conquered it was all this, until he started to talk about it, and it just wildly affected me. So when you see the New Psycho-Cybernetics, Dan, so moved by this book, bought the rights to it from his wife, Maxwell Maltz's wife, after he passed, and did a little edited and updated version. I used to recommend that one straight away. I don't, because I think you should listen to Psycho-Cybernetics as it was originally written by the creator, without any kind of edits to it. Because in its raw form, it's very much related to what Maltz learned as a plastic surgeon when he would change somebody's face and realize they didn't see anything differently because they had a certain belief and perception of who they were. And a lot of that is created when you're young. So if somebody tells you you're a dummy all your life and you just accept that somewhere subconsciously, you have to do what he would call mental plastic surgery to get rid of that and re-believe, but you can do it. So to change the self-image, you need to change your habits, actions, and thoughts, but especially the thoughts, because the thoughts go back to this concept of the theater of the mind, right? So imagine yourself in a theater, and you're sitting up in the back of the theater, elevated above the stage and above the audience, and you can see everything that's going on in here. Well, you can actually create this whole scene as to who you are. And if you think that sounds corny, I want you to think about Olympic athletes who I guarantee you have seen and really not noticed them doing mental rehearsal so intentionally. So if you see these athletes, especially the divers or the mogul skiers or the ski jumpers, you'll see them close their eyes and their bodies begin to twitch the movements as if it's really happening. And in his book, Maltz makes a very, very strong case for the fact that your nervous system doesn't know the difference between mental rehearsal and the actual doing of the thing. That's a powerful point in the teaching that he puts forward. Powerful. Because if you can imagine, as we apply it to our business, oh my gosh, I could never go out there and list $1 million property, you say to yourself. And believe me, I've been through this many times with people. And I said, okay, well, why don't you tonight, at the end of the night, when you're relaxed, because this is almost like a meditative state, you're relaxed, sit in your favorite seat, sit up in bed, dim the lights, get yourself into a relaxed state, close your eyes while you're still conscious, get into the theater of your mind, and watching a newer version of yourself, finding the $1 million property, calling it, getting an appointment, going there. In my case, if you're under my watch, following the 7 steps, staying disciplined in there, giving the tips on what to do, what not to do, doing the analysis, showing the net sheet, and having them be thrilled with it. Just practice it in your head and imagine it happens. Now, again, you might need somebody like me to say, okay, what did you say again? I want to imagine this. Yes. Strategically, that you're going in there with a plan and a unique selling proposition, which we'll get to in the next couple of weeks. But I want you to start to practice, even if you don't know how. This is a good point, by the way, that he makes and Kennedy makes. Even if you don't know how tonight that you would actually get the $1 million listing, just go practice this in the theater of your mind. Because what's crazy about what his teachings teach are that the subconscious mind actually doesn't need to know how. It just needs to know what you want. So based on what we talked about last week, remember we set the North Star and we were very specific. Don't make a weird number that's ridiculously unachievable. We broke it down to Starbucks or Whole Foods. I think we even used $25 an hour, 44 weeks a year, whatever we use. You were going to make $16,500 a year. Well, you can make that in your sleep, 1 to 2 deals in a real estate deal, depending on where you are in the geography and how expensive properties are. So all I'm asking you to do is imagine yourself doing that once or twice and just not even worrying about it. Just saying, hi, I'm me, and I got some stuff for you. And yes, we like you. So even if it starts off with all that gushy type of rapport building stuff that you erroneously think is going to be enough, still imagine it. Just really you're trying to see the outcome or the North Star goal and you being able to do it. And even saying in the theater of the mind, I don't know how I'm going to do this yet, but this lunatic shows up every Wednesday night and he tells me I can do it. And so I'm just going to talk to my subconscious and I'm going to change my beliefs and my perceptions. And I'm going to think about this every night before I go to bed. So that's going to create this habit of me before I go to bed, spending a few minutes in the theater of my mind, seeing me successfully dealing with a seller and buyers too, right? Just seeing it happen successfully, that this is going to happen for you. Because then it makes the action steps of coming to me and actually learning and then actually doing an open house and actually saying the things and actually giving a listing presentation and actually saying the things. It makes those action steps easier to accept. Because if not, you bring this old self-image into this learning and you say, and you'll cherry pick me. But that's you, Danny. Your animal brain is dangerous, by the way. It will be the thing that explains away the possibility of creating a new self-image of success. It will show up and go, no. That's him. He's 26 years in. Didn't you hear him say 26 years? You don't have that kind of time. You could never do this. And that's the devilish voice in our heads that's locked into this old self-image that thinks you can't do it. And a lot of people start off saying, I think I can do this, but they don't make it a habit to keep reminding themselves. Because the last piece, by using positive affirmations and visualizations, you can reprogram the subconscious mind. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If you think about what Maltz says in this book, he says a lot of thoughts about who you are have come from the outside. They weren't necessarily generated by you practicing. Somebody told you who you were and you accepted them. Some bad things happened to you and you accepted them. You accept all those things without ever realizing there's actually a bag of tools, psychological tools, to create a new self-image. But you have to practice this. You can't just say, oh, that was what a great lecture tonight, and then do nothing. Okay? Come back here in another, 12 weeks, cycle, and I'll do this again, and I'll tell you again and again. And I'll ask you, did you go listen to the audio Cybernetics? Well, no. Did you read the book? Well, no. Right? I know how this movie goes, but I'm not going to stop repeating it. And what's great for me, the cheat code I have is I do this every 12, weeks, take 2 off and do it again and again. So for me, it's a reiteration of everything that I've learned that has continuously changed and improved and helps me get my compound effect. But the subconscious mind is staggeringly powerful. And I apply it once I learned this from Maltz as a real estate investor, which is where my heart really started in this business by buying and flipping things. I ended up buying the building I'm in tonight, which has been in this family that I bought it from since 1976. 1976. And another one down the street that was a strip mall that drove me crazy, that it was this distress sale. I saw this beauty in it, and I just kept going. I'm going to own them. I'm going to own them. I'm going to own them. Months went by. I'm like, hurry up, hurry up. Somebody else is going to do it. My mind wouldn't let me alone. And I didn't know at the time how I would finance, especially one piece of it after the first two were done. But I just, suffice to say, I figured it all out because my subconscious mind simplified it, gave me the resources I needed, pointed me in the right direction, and I made it happen. It's mind-bending to me that can happen. Well, my whole entire personal real estate portfolio, which is not that many properties, but they're nice, significant commercial properties, I cannot tell you how many times I did that over the years with flips and everything. I would just get my mind on it, not knowing how the heck I was going to do it, when it was going to do it, but just would go home at night and I would give myself time in the theater of the mind to know it was there, right? So enough of that. I don't like to always tell my anecdotes, but I have to give you something that says, I don't just teach this, I practice this, right? All right, next, after the subconscious of the mind and the self-image discussion, you come into realizing that there's also a programming that you come in with from a personality profile standpoint. Now, how Dr. William Moulton Marston figured this out, I have no idea. He's actually the guy that worked with and for the FBI and developed the lie detector test. Well, he also developed the DISC personality profile. So this is, if you've ever heard of Myers-Briggs, this is like that, right? It's a profile of who we are. And I don't know how it can be so simplified like this, but it's so unbelievably accurate. It blew me away the first time I was introduced to it. So the D stands for dominant, the I for influential, the S for steady, and the C for compliant, right? So that's really conscientious or compliant, very similar, right? So that's the first time I saw those words. I'm like, okay, wow, this is really interesting. But then I learned that the DISC personality profile could help me understand my natural behavior in communication styles. So everybody wants to throw labels on you and oh, you're aggressive or you're this or yeah. No, I'm just who I am. If you ask Moulton Marston's, right? If you ask this guy, nope, you're already pre-wired a certain way and this is who you are. So by understanding my own and your DISC personality profile, you can communicate definitely more effectively with others by adjusting your communication and interaction style. So again, I know it's hard because you see me in the mode of teacher, lecturer on a night like this. But what you don't realize is how, because of this stuff, I learned to adjust it. And I'll give you another anecdote. Laura, who's been my client care manager, now also slash operating manager for the company, she went with me to shadow me for the first time on a luxury presentation. And so we sat down and we went through this whole process of the 7 steps. It was early in the 7 steps too, by the way. And this listing presentation taught me about who my competitors really were, what they were saying. And I made a lot of adjustments. I'll never forget that day. It was over in Hyannisport. I can see it like it's yesterday. And so we went in the car, we sat down, and she just turned to me and looked at me. She goes, who was that? I started laughing. I said, what do you mean? She said, I have never heard you be so quiet before. I said, yeah. Well, that's the actual tactical implementation of the DISC personality profile. I realized that after I had taken this test, that I was a couple of things that other people weren't. And so let me just finish this. By leveraging your strengths and improving your weaknesses, which I'm giving you an example of, you can be a more effective team member too. Okay. So it's not just in manager of yourself and the people around you. So whether it's sellers and buyers, they become part of your team, or whether it's actual people working for you, they become part of your team too. So when you look at all this stuff, it really is like, this is what it is, right? It's like, you can't get away from this. So when I took it, I'll never forget, I was at a conference, I took it, and I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, 11 on the I, influential, 10 on the D. So they were almost exactly the same. And I was a mirror image on the other two. So as far as steadiness, I was a -10, and conscientious, or conscientious is one word. I liked, trying to remember, there's been other words I've used for this, but conscientious just means like you're very detail oriented. And I was a -11. And that was a big wake up call to me, because I'm big at, why can't you adapt yourself once you learn something? So it was just a stunner. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why a lot of these people would say, oh, he's too aggressive for me. Or like, I couldn't get a word in edgewise, because I was going in a natural style, and I was selling them, right? I was selling them by talking, until basically they were believers in me. And I like people. So then some of them that were more like high I's or D's, and there was a natural connection between us, you could be in there for 2 hours because you had a match, right? But it was all that other business where I didn't know how to gear down, because I didn't have this context, where I couldn't adjust my style. And especially with people who are S's, because their S's can be grudge holders on their negative side. And they can also want to see that you're not skipping details. And when you're a high I, you can be like, oh, yeah, don't worry about that. Oh, that's not the attitude these people are looking for. They want to know that there's a system in place, and that there are steps to follow, and that you will be taking them through that. And then the really conscientious people are like, okay, I see a typo in this thing you gave me, right? They get very detail oriented. They're very compliant. That's a better word than conscientious. They're very compliant. They stay right inside the lines. And if you go a little bit over, you have to explain why to those people, or forget it. You're dead. So imagine giving a listing presentation to an S and C in full D and I mode. No chance, right? No chance. You have to find some common ground. So this was a dramatic eye-opener for me. One, that I could imagine myself in the theater of my mind giving the same presentation to a variety of different people in a different way, in a different tone, in a different pace. I began to see myself doing that, and reprogram my subconscious to identify when that one of those moments was required, which is every time. You have to read that room, which is why I love me a walkthrough when I go into a house for the first time. Thank you so much for having me over. If you wouldn't mind taking me for a quick tour of the property so I know what we're talking about, I can see everything. Oh, great. And they don't know to do that. So great. And then I'm very much more passive when I'm going through trying to determine, what type of person is this? Are they telling me about the exact kind of nails they used and how thick the walls are? I have a client like that right now, right? Everything's detailed. He gives me a page of everything, right? Every room by room, what he did. So I have to recognize that. I can't blow that off. I have to say, my gosh, that's incredible. That's great, right? Look at this. And then ask questions. Well, what about this? Why did you use this? So you're meeting them. And it's not phony. It's actually the way that you actually are learning about the product, but more so about them too. So you could see that, so that by the time you get to the table, you know what adjustments you need to make. So I always love that walkthrough. On an open house, when you're tracking people that way, the original systematization of, thank you so much for coming, the sellers asked that everybody sign in. By the way, if you're wondering where leads are, they're hiding in plain sight. Look at how thick this is. These are all the sign-in sheets from just my open houses. And I can't tell you how many people here signed in with no agent. Like, this is weighty, because I do 6 of these a weekend when I'm around. You can hear it back here, right? So I like that process because it allows a little bit of a setup, like the walkthrough for seller, where I say nothing when they're signing in. I see how detailed and focused they are and how organized they want to be. And then they take the brochure that I've offered them after they sign in. They open it up because I told them the MLS is in there. They go straight to it. I get some kind of a clue as to how they behave. The other ones like just look up and start talking to me. I have to remind them to go, well, that's an I, right? The D just grabs it and starts walking through. Yep, I'll take a look. Oh, good. Okay. Right. So you can use this framework so well. But what I did learn also over the years of teaching this and doing this, I don't lead with this anymore. Okay. It's part of a framework. What I'm leading with is service and the giving of information, no matter who somebody is. So if you go back to that theory of the mind, what I learned through the laws of psychology to try to get listings at or above the median, to attract buyers at above the median, to have a more profitable business, I learned that I needed to be a giver. So regardless of your personality, I have programmed my brain that every time I'm interacting with somebody, I better be giving my best stuff for free to that person, right? That's the setup. So I might have to give it differently to each personality type, sure, but it's the same business model. And that's what's cool about it. I'm not winging it with a D because, oh, I see he's a D, so I'll just talk shorter. No, I'll say the same thing, but I'll condense it. The high I, okay, he's talking too much. I got to cut him off a little bit and say, yep, that's great, but look at this. So it's just an adjustment for the system. So a lot of people still have this reversed where they think they're supposed to completely do something different for each personality type. And that's just not right. What's right is stick to your formula, because not everybody's going to fit into your formula. And that's a clue about what we talk about in this course, avatar or ideal. Okay. Again, I said this at the beginning of the call, and I'll add it again here. Now, you know these things. You got Maltz out there talking about psycho-cybernetics, mind steering systems, the subconscious and the self-image. You got Dr. Marston's out there talking about which one of these things are you and who's on the other side and what adjustments you have to make. So those are things that you're aware of now. But now you have to commit to this self-improvement. And again, I go back to Ray Dalio talking about the compound effect, not just being for finance, but also being for your own self-improvement. So you have to commit to this constant, never-ending improvement. So the Japanese term for that is Kaizen. So I'll never forget learning about Kaizen for the first time. And the example was Toyota. And I'm going to give you an example about a Toyota car. During the recession, I did not think it right to show up to anybody's property in a fancy car. As much as I'm a car guy and like me a good car because I spend enormous amounts of time in them, right? I went out and I got a Prius when the recession hit. That's a long time ago. That's 2009, 2010-ish. That's a long time ago. That car back then got 52 miles to the gallon. 52 miles to the gallon of gasoline way back then, which shows you an example of Kaizen and how Toyota over time committed itself to this slow and steady, constant improvement, this long victory, generational victory, multi-generational victory to just produce this amazing car. And still to this day, I still think their cars have some of the best efficiency, and they're just way ahead of people. Now, whether you like a Toyota or not, you could go to their Lexus brand. They're just known for their price points, very good quality, outstanding gas mileage. And that really has been their shtick because of this philosophy to really microeconomically fix it. Now, I don't track Toyota as a company. I don't know how well that has evolved. I could make a case for Tesla. Tesla has committed to this over time. The original Teslas weren't anywhere near what today is. And I know that because I test drove before I got my latest car. I test drove a Tesla. I was staggered by the performance of that car to self-drive me from place to place. I was stunned. I was in that car. It went around curves, following the lines like staggeringly accurately, a mind blown. So you talk about steady improvement from just a nothing company to this. That's what that commitment is. That's an example of it, right? So by focusing on that continuous improvement, you make these small incremental changes that add up over time. I am telling you, I am still blown away when I look at my website's resume where my properties are now, I have over a page of $3 million plus stuff into $2 million stuff. Well, it was only about 7 or 8 years ago when I was regularly more so well below the average on a regular basis. And early in my career, before I got strategic and all I was tactical, I was definitely below average and probably below median. I don't recall it, but I sold things 10 times less than some of the stuff I sell today. Let that sink in. So if you don't think incremental work ethic on strategic improvement that leads to better tactics works, I'm the walking proof, right? And that's all I can talk about is what I know and what our agents do to copy me and get the similar improvement, right? So the key to constant improvement is to establish a culture of commitment. And I should put here, self-accountability. Yes, as a coach. Yes, as a broker. I try my best to hold you accountable. But if you don't commit to this, the devil's going to come for you and get you to quit. Because you have a weak self-image when it comes to business, because you haven't committed and you haven't become self-accountable. Plus, a little bit of naivete. We live in a world that wants instant gratification, and there is no such thing on a regular, continuous basis. Yes, you might get some constant, and quick hits, but to build a business, which this is, takes commitment, and you have to be accountable to it, and you have to have no quit in you. Because what I always say is, what's your alternative? You're going to take the same uncommitted, unself-accountable person to the next venue, and your self-image is going to be the same and the same and the same. Now, maybe you don't like this business. That's one thing, and you can't commit it and you can't be accountable. But if you really like this business and the concept of selling houses, you have to become this person. And this is why we do this call. That's inherent, that you're committed to long-term continuous improvement to take advantage of the compound effect. Like, think about it. In finance, you don't really see the compound effect until the second year. You got your simple interest of 10% the first year. It's the compound interest if you get 10% the next year on the 110, right? That's the compound effect. So 24 months, but everybody wants, we're like, well, I didn't get anything done in the first 6 months. That business wasn't for me. Oh my gosh, talk about naive. I'm not saying that that's good. That's why I tell you, well, don't quit your day job while you're building a business, especially in one where you have to go get the inventory of the listing, get the inventory of the buyer, and then work them to before there's something. I understand that, but you're getting big chunks. And that's why I equate it to this concept of last week, hey, go commit your life to, Whole Foods or something like that for $25 an hour for 44 weeks for 15 hours. Make yourself 16.5. If you'd rather have consistency and make that, good. But you can make that in one deal or maybe 1.5, or maybe if you're in a really inexpensive place, 2 deals over the same 44 weeks of commitment. Remember, I'm not saying 52. I'm giving you 8 weeks off. Come on now. Like, is it that hard to commit to that? That's where you have to look in the mirror and say, who am I right now? Why can't I commit to something like that? I want it. That's why I'm here. But why can't I? And that's where you start to work on that commitment. You go there and you see yourself like Toyota, like Tesla, long-term commitment to this thing, right? So by continuously improving your processes and systems, you can create a streamlined and more efficient organization. And that is so dang true for us, man. I will tell you, we are just tight right now is the best way I could explain it. We're tight. Everything we do is simple. It's clean. It's tight. We don't let it get, crazy. And so our streamlining continues to refine these small little things. Just as an example, I'm sitting here with my new newsletter. And when I tell you it's tight, I went down to see the guy to say, okay, I want to feel this. Okay. And I got it. And I'm a great material, good choice, but I don't like some of these margins. My head looks like it's a balloon. What are we doing here? Why don't we cut this in half? He's like, yep, move this up a little bit because this might get scanned, right? Wrong. So he gave me some, tips. That's streamlining micro things because you might want to do this. I said, no. It's not might want to do this. I will not stop doing this. You will be doing this for me every single quarter going forward. Oh, and by the way, I have a coaching program that once they see this, do you ship anywhere? It's like, absolutely. So you see what I mean? Like, it's that mentality of just detail, commitment to details, to make it look the best it can, to match it up with something else that I do digitally, right? That's what this all looks like practically. Okay. Remember this: self-image development, the theater of the mind. That's what I really, 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 really want you to take away first tonight, is that you have to commit to programming yourself subconscious. All right. So let me stop sharing these and we will get into it. Why do I look so low in the chair today? Oh, it's because it's sunk on me. Sorry. Looked like my little brother giving that lecture, didn't I, Shauna? All right. I know. Do you know you, Shauna? You get a kick out of this. So my current barber is Thai, and so she's got the greatest Thai accent, not accident. So she looks at me. She looks at my beard. She goes, "Oh, you look like Panda." I'm like, okay, I'm going to make you shave it if you say that again. All right. Questions for me tonight. Thoughts for me tonight. I got a couple of things in the chat. Good. Hi, Jackie. How are you? Oh, Steve, back in the saddle. Good to see you, pal. Yeah, welcome. Good to see your face. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Fire away. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're welcome. And that's exactly what we want them to say to you, that you're professional. That's what a systematic, way of doing things does. If you just go in there and wing it, and he's prone to winging it, right? And it's this, in his case, he gets it. It's the self-discipline to stay inside lines, right? That's very hard for a lot of top producers because they got so used to being able to muscle their way to success. I mean, believe me, I coach most of my clients are like that or started like that. It's very difficult for them to develop a commitment to improvement, to self-discipline. Very hard because they're just yeah, well, they get anxious, right? But when you get a win like that, where it goes from the subconscious to actually doing it, and I don't know how hybrid it was, but presuming you talked about 7 steps and you go for some math, I mean, at least you're in the guardrails there, and it shows them a process, right? And it makes you very difficult to compete with. And I love the fact that they said, we don't like what you're saying, but we understand it because it's a professional approach, right? Yeah. Yeah, but also you becoming something different, which is the topic of the call today. You created a better self-image from when I first knew you to now. It's that your commitment to Kaizen, your own personal improvement, puts you in a position like that tactically where it goes from listening to me and thinking about you doing it to actually doing it. Now you see how I teach. I'll always give an anecdote or I'll take one of your anecdotes and here's one, right? So for everybody listening, your personal improvement in this context of business served you well in the house. Now go get the listing, right? Yeah. Bravo. Open houses, open houses, open houses, open houses, open houses, open houses. Nobody's selling houses these days unless it's a real winner priced right without open houses. We work so hard, I do, at open houses for myself, and now we're allowing the agents to go in there, and that's how we're getting stuff done. Some people don't like it. We got one client she doesn't like where it's at. She's going to take it off the market for now, and it's like, yeah, you're not getting 3.4 million. You paid too much. I didn't know you back then. Market's corrected. It's not happening, right? So good, bravo. All right, anybody else tonight? You're welcome, of course. Hi. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yep. Hand 100, 100. And you can, and by the way, I'm glad you just said what you said. I'm going to give you all a link to a free disc test here. So let me put it in the chat. Hang on, because you, what's that? Good. Yeah, good. Just make it easy for all of you that attend tonight. It's there. So let me see if I can put this. Yeah. Sure, sure. I mean, I think you can change, I do. I think you can change. Um, I might have softened my eye, if anything, right? Is that my eye was probably way more insecure than it is today. I don't feel the need to talk so much to get somebody to like me so much. My D is probably really really emerged more than anything. I'm just a total cut to the chase guy, as you know, because you listen to me each week. And I do it out of love, and I have to be careful. Lee, myself, Dean, we can all be a little bit too edgy sometimes, simply because we're D personalities. So I have to watch it because every one of these letters has a yin and a yang. Alexis, right? The D is awesome because they cut to the chase and they get it done, but they can scare the crap out of people and they can be too rough, right? An I can really be a good salesperson, but they can talk too much. An S can definitely follow a process, but they can be stubborn and grudge holders. A C can be very organized and very compliant to protect you, but they can also, get you stuck, right? And you're very stuck as a C. So everything has a yin and a yang to it on this disc personality profile. And I think that's important to keep in mind, right? So cool. Awesome. Anything else tonight? Okay. Thank you all for being here live. See you next week. All right. And any of you TRCers, we'll see you on the calls. Have a good night.